So, Tom, what did you sense after word leaked out and then everybody's talking about the conversation with NBA Commissioner Adam Silver yesterday and a lot of the players about a return, potential return to the court?
Yeah, Mike, at first glance, this is exciting. The players are unified. The star players are unified. LeBron James, Stephen Curry, Chris Paul, Damian Lillard, Giannis Antetokounmpo are all unified in saying they want to play basketball, which I don't think is anyone's surprise that these stars want to get back to playing basketball in a safe and healthy environment. Whatever the league decides, they will determine whether that's something they want to go for. Look, I think this is a good thing that players are talking and players are having conversations on a Zoom call, especially the stars of the league. But I think we need to keep perspective here, Mike. What they're actually saying here is, hey, we'd like to go and play basketball again, but we don't know under what circumstances that's going to be. So imagine if I asked you, Mike, would you like to go back to your favorite restaurants in a healthy and safe manner? The answer is yes. Would you like to go to a concert? Would you like to go to a movie theater in a safe and healthy environment? So all the players want to get back to the court, but I think the elephant in the room here is under what financial circumstances, because this week has been circled on the calendar on the players union side for weeks. Friday, May 15th is the first day that players will be having a 25% pay cut in their paychecks as a result of this pandemic. Up until now, they have been receiving their pay in full. So I think the players are now having this unified front because they realize the money's going to be crunched a little bit come Friday, and they need to be accelerated in a return to play if possible.
Parallel society with the economy, such a significant factor in returning to work for many. And I think it's going to be something we'll echo in a conversation about Major League Baseball and their return coming up in a little bit. I want to come back to Adam Silver. He did mention in there, a 4 to 6 week window to make a decision one way or the other. That was read by some folks as, okay, there's a deadline, a time frame here. By others, it was seen as maybe we won't be ready in 4 to 6 weeks to put out a plan. What have you heard has been the overriding majority of the opinion regarding that?
Yeah, for weeks I've been hearing June 15th, and that's been reported before as June 15th, mid-June, that they were going to come to a decision. And that fits on the timeline that was reported yesterday, around a 4-week timeline beginning yesterday, of course. So, I think they're going to drag this out until the last second because I think they need to gather information, and that is at a premium right now, is information. Why do certain players or certain humans have a severe reaction to this COVID-19? Who will be in the bubble scenario, the proposed bubble quarantine scenario in either Vegas or in Atlantic City or in Orlando, or perhaps all three? Who would be allowed? Would it be your parents? Would it be your family? And what kind of financial ramifications are in play there? So a lot of things, a lot of difficult questions and hard questions are going to be asked in the next couple of weeks. And I think Adam Silver has been consistent this entire time. They're going to take their time to figure this out. And what I'm hearing is that in mid-June, they're going to have to come to a decision on whether to give the green light or not on the rest of the season. But I do think that it's important to keep things in perspective. The players, of course, they want to play basketball again, but the financial side is so much more complicated. For example, if they go back to a playoff scenario, does that mean that Stephen Curry, who's in last place in the NBA, receives no more paychecks for the rest of the season? Because a lot of players are not in the playoffs right now, and if they return to a playoff format, skipping the regular season, I think a lot of players outside of that playoff picture are going to be wondering, what does that mean for my paycheck?
Tom, how would you characterize the value of the relationship Adam Silver has with the best players in the league?
Oh, I think it's so different than David Stern. I think that was from day one. Adam Silver wanted to have a strong relationship with the star players in the NBA, whether it's LeBron James, Giannis Antetokounmpo. I think he's been a much more player-centric commissioner than, say, David Stern, who I think was much more aligned with the interests of the owners. And I think by handing an olive branch to the players and saying, let's open up the lines of communication, We want a player-friendly league. We want to be player empowerment, all about that. And I think in the Donald Sterling fiasco a few years ago, that really came through, is that Adam Silver wants to be an ambassador for the players. Now the question is, Mike, he has to answer to the 30 owners. And so he is working on behalf of 30 owners. And the question is, you have to balance being a player-centric commissioner or an owner-centric commissioner. And I think Adam Silver has a tough task ahead of him, is making sure both interests are aligned.
Tom, let's talk about what's happening in NBA facilities, because I was just reading this morning. Miami, 4 of the 17 are in South Florida. They've opened up their doors. Orlando didn't reopen their team practice facility yesterday. Denver, some guys showing up for voluntary. They don't have all the nuggets in Denver just yet. Detroit's a few weeks away still until Michigan Governor Gretchen Whitmer comes through with more of reopening of this state. So you've got a variety, I should say, and various scenarios that these teams are facing at the moment. How much is that going to impact how quickly basketball gets back on the court?
Well, I think it's pretty clear, Mike, that what they want to do is have these, what Adam Silver called a campus environment, bubble cities, as part of the return to play in the proposal. Now, this creates a lot of uneven competitive balance here, where LeBron James and Kawhi Leonard in Los Angeles have a Los Angeles County mandate that the stay-at-home order is extended for the next 3 months. So what does that do for LeBron James and Kawhi Leonard? Whereas in Orlando, this is interesting because Orlando still hasn't been clear to open up the practice facility, and yet the NBA is looking at Orlando as a possible destination for a return-to-play environment. So this is all very complicated, and I can tell you, Giannis Antetokounmpo, the MVP of the league, has not shot a basketball in 2 months. And so a lot of players are on different landscapes right now. Kevin Love is shooting at the practice facility. And so it's a very different scenario for each team and each market. And I will say this, keep in mind, Mike D'Antoni, Greg Popovich, Alvin Gentry are all north of 65 years old. So they are not being allowed to be in the practice facilities, head coaches across the league. But when are they going to be allowed to coach their team? That's a very big question on the minds of a lot of people in the league.
One last point on this, Tom. I thought this was interesting in the conversations with Adam Silver and the players yesterday. The discussion of officials and players getting comfortable with the idea that if there's a positive test for COVID-19, that doesn't necessarily shutter down or shut down the entirety of play. And getting comfortable with that as a potential scenario once you get restarted, to me, that's a conversation that's going to really take a lot of tough looks in the mirror by both players, league executives, and owners to make that decision that, okay, if there's a positive test, we still might go ahead and play. To me, of all the things that came out, that's the one that I thought was going to be the toughest one to try to come to a resolution on.
Absolutely. Could not agree more, Mike. That jumped off the page for one reason. Where is that line going to be? Where is that line, the reasonable, the comfort level of the NBA? How many positive tests is okay? How many positive tests are not okay? And where that line is going to determine so much. How is that going to be written in the contracts with the players? Is if X number of players test positive, we have to shut down? So there's a lot of gray area here that needs to be ironed out. And it's a stark difference than 2 months ago when on March 11th, one player tested positive and everything shut down. That obviously has changed because the variable is they would supposedly had more testing. Back then, 2 months ago, they did not have testing. And in this scenario, they would have to have a way, way higher number of testing.
Yeah, the Rudy Gobert thing shut the league and all of sports down. And now how do you balance that? Lastly, your life is covering basketball, your professional life, so you've been watching The Last Dance. What do you see as this deep dive back into not just the Bulls and Jordan, but the 90s NBA as you look back at it now some 20, 25 years later from the perspective of the NBA in 2020?
Oh, I'm loving it, Mike. I just did a podcast with Will Perdue, his longtime teammate with the Bulls, and Kendall Gill, who faced him in the Last Dance season in the 98 playoffs with the New Jersey Nets. By the way, John Calipari was the coach of that Nets team. So Kendall Gill, Casey Johnson, who's the longtime reporter for the Bulls, was on the podcast, and we discussed, just humanizing Michael Jordan, what he was like as a person. And I learned a lot, especially with Will Perdue and the card games on the team plane, and Michael Jordan stepping over to the B.J. Armstrong and Will Perdue playing challenging them to $1 blackjack simply because, as Will put it, he wanted to take money out of Will's pocket and put it in his. So many good stories, but the thing is that I think this humanizes Michael Jordan. We get to see how isolated he was in his hotel room, the media circus that he faced, and also the pain and anguish and the sadness that came with being such a big star. And I think everyone is just rallying around this documentary and seeing that this is an amazing athlete, but also he was a human being at the end of the day. And I think that is what's coming across, not just to Will Perdue, Kendall Gill, and the rest of the people watching, but I think everyone is that Michael Jordan at his base core was a competitor, but he also had a family, and he lost his father during the middle of it. And we have to remember that this had a lot of costs. As he said, winning has a price, and I think you're seeing it now.
Yeah. And I think the great players of this generation are seeing what Michael put into it, which led to what he got out of it. And it gives them a chance to get a little sneak peek behind the curtain at all of that as well. Tom, thanks. A lot of interesting conversation. There's going to be more here as there are more deep moves by the NBA to try to get back to play. We appreciate the time. Tom Haberstroh, our NBA insider for NBCSports.com.
Hi, I'm Mike Tirico, and thanks for watching. Make sure to hit subscribe for the latest news and highlights from NBC Sports.